Hello there, Kim Coles here, and I have a very special guest. My very special guest and I are twins. I'm going to leave that there until you get to see her in just a moment. In the meantime, let me read you her bio. She is one of the co-authors in the Wisdom Gifts book experience. And I call it an experience because these amazing wise women have come to share their wisdom, their learning, their gifts with you. And I have one of them, my twin, Wink, in just a moment. Hold, please. Priscilla Dames is a conflict resolution trainer, educator, and author with over 40 years of experience. Her latest book is 99 Conflicts to Avoid and 100 Ways to Resolve Them. She was selected by the Anti-Defamation League as a consultant and sent to racially tense situations throughout Florida. As conflict heightened in schools across the country, she became a safe schools specialist responsible for conflict prevention and intervention, crisis response, and staff and community training. Her lifelong interest in diversity led her to an internship with the Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolence. It began at the Conflict Center for Resolution in Kenya, Africa, and was completed at the King Nonviolence Center in Cuba. Miss Dames was invited to train ex-militants in the Nigerian Amnesty Program in Nigeria, Africa, in Kenyan transformational nonviolence. She has received numerous awards, including Mayor Jimenez and the Miami-Dade Commissioner proclaiming April 4th Priscilla Dames Blake Day. Ooh, she has a whole day just for her. When Priscilla is not writing and training, you may find her with women, encouraging them to enjoy life and have silly fun. Miss Dames is the founder of Wingspan Seminars, whose mission focuses on improving organizational relationships and conflict dynamics. We don't have a conflict right now because we dressed just alike. Please welcome Priscilla Dames to the stage.
Thank you so much, Kim. As you see, both of us love animal print. I have this everywhere and everything.
So do I. And we didn't plan what we were going to wear today. I knew we were going to be talking today, but how much do I love that we showed up as twinsies? We're of like minds, and I love that.
I think we have so much in common, actually.
Do. We
Yeah.
do. Well, I just read this glowing bio and I have so much I want to talk to you about. Thank you for being a bright, shiny light in the world with what you do. So, first, let me just thank you for doing what you do. And to really also thank you for saying yes to being a part of the Wisdom Gifts book experience. So, talk to me about what it was like to get your chapter written and get this book out into the world.
I'm really glad you asked me about the book first because wisdom, that in itself is heavy. But when I saw what GIFTS stood for, I actually could put myself in any of those spots. The GIFTS, the first one just meaning gratitude. There's so many things in my life I have been so blessed and grateful for so many for.
Mhm.
I was a little girl raised by a Christian mother, and my father was a pastor. And Indianapolis, Indiana is called Naptown. It still is. And so the different places that I have been throughout my life, and when I look back, I think, oh my gosh, how did I do that? How did I get there? It was from standing on other folks' shoulders, but
Mhm.
I just have to say I'm so grateful of all the international teams. I have been selected to do conflict resolution or some type of conflict and teaming to do. And I have to say, Dr. Lafayette was one of them. He's like the Kenyan transformer all over the world.
Mhm.
And Dr. Alongo, who also chose me to be on his team to go to Africa. And it goes on and on and on with the various coaches. My friends have been so supportive. And I have really sharp friends, but I also have friends that have just been with me because we like each other for 30, 40
Yeah.
years. And it's just so much that I have to be grateful. The coaches, so much to be grateful for.
Wonderful.
Even as you move down, when you say we're going to get back to intention, why I chose intention, but even for the triumphant, I've had many many triumphs in my life, and it's just so much that I could talk about the gifts part of it. But being intentional,
Yeah.
I think that more than any of them spoke to me.
Right. Well, so just for those who don't know, the GIFTS stands for gratitude, intention, forgiveness, triumphs, and self love. And I'm so glad that the work and the idea, the concept of the book resonated with you so much that you could have fit into any of those concepts because you've built a life that is so intentional. And so, uh, you know, let's talk about what it takes to be a conflict resolutionist. I just made up a new word. I don't even know if that's a real thing. What caused you to choose this? And the reason why I say this, so we're twins in the way that we dress, but what we don't have in common is I am not a fan of conflict. I want it resolved, and I want it resolved as quickly as possible. So I'm sure we have that in common, but I don't like conflict. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know how to go in and negotiate fixing it other than can't we all just get along or can't we just hug it out? And sometimes a hug is not the way to get to it. So the first question I would ask you is what drew you to the work of looking at conflict and looking for solutions to the conflict? What drew you to that?
Um, if I can, for 1 second, the F, hopefully we'll get back to the book
Hmm.
because the book itself is so dynamic, the whole idea of the book. And the F, meaning forgiveness, I had to learn how to forgive myself for not being perfect in so many ways. And then the S, the self love, self care, that I'm learning how to do now. So, and as we talk, perhaps we'll get into that under intention. But I had to say those two because I
Yeah,
really could fit in any of those.
you really could. And listen, let's talk about if we're talking about the F for forgiveness, it's I can see why you would resonate with that. Being someone who works in the world of conflict, being someone who has been hired to step in and consult and train armies, and train uh, folks in understanding how to break through and break out of being in that space of what I would say, pain and something that doesn't move forward. And we need forgiveness in order to move forward. So I can see how you resonate with all of that. So what drew you to that work?
It was so interesting because I was teaching elementary school at the time in Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and they sent us to the World of Difference. They sent several teachers to the World of Difference campaign
Mm.
by the Anti-Defamation League and Channel 10. And I'll never forget, a bigot stood up and gave his opinion on why people are different than they should be. And he truly, truly showed that he was a bigot in what he was saying. And I'll never forget, I was so angry with this man that I didn't know. I crossed my arms like this and made, I say, ugly. The face was so ugly. It was
Mm.
a ugly face, yes. And I was just so angry with him. And I'll be doggone if that didn't end up in the newspaper. And the Anti Defamation League at that point called me and invited me to be trained by them. And from there, and that's how I became a trainer. And I started off being sent all over to racially tense areas in the state of Florida for the Anti Defamation League. Uh,
Mm.
so that's how I got my start, and that was like 1,000 years ago. Like you said, 40 years ago. It's been a long time.
Well, and like I said, thank you for shining your light in that way. We need that, and we need that in this world more than ever. As someone who, is an expert in moving through conflict, what do you look for to train someone? What do you look for? What's the first place we start when we see that there's two sides or three sides or conflict? What's the first place that we start when people are angry and at odds? What's the first insertion point that you see that is the beginning of breaking it down? And yeah, yeah, to break it down, what's the first place that we start?
Okay, there's so much conflict out there and so many different levels of conflict. Conflict itself is this big.
Mm,
And so it could be what you call a blip, or it could be a crisis. When it's a crisis, that means that there's potential there for violence.
mm,
And there's so many. I continue to study. You never stop learning. And you should see my library. Um, but there's so much to conflict. And so I have quite a few certifications. I started my doctorate, but race is one thing. But what if you get into a conflict with your own family member? So that's a totally different angle. There
mm,
are three different things that everyone must consider when there is a conflict that you're in. The most important thing, I believe, is the relationship. Who
mm,
are you in a conflict with? And what kind of relationship do you want at the end of the conflict? Do you want to maintain that relationship, or is it someone, associate, working in Macy's that you may never see again in your life?
mhm,
So the issue is also important. Is it important enough to you to get into an all out argument, fight, or to go somewhere else with it? Or is it one of those things you say, I need to let it go. I need to just to let it go.
mm,
Um, so the issue and the level of upset the other person is, because look at today. Now, when I started was 40 years ago. The road rage, for an example, today is off the chain. And right now, we're going through so much in our country having to do with gun control. So how angry is that person? It's not about right or wrong all the time. Sometimes you need just to back away
mm,
because you see that person is so much more upset than you are, or do you want to go there with them? And if it's a stranger, you don't know where they're going to go. Do they have a gun? Do they have a knife? Are they going to punch you out? And so
mm.
you have to consider all three elements of conflict before you even start.
That's fascinating. I wouldn't have even thought that it starts with the relationship, and what do you want out of this? What do you want? And thinking of the outcome. So somebody has to maintain a cool head.
Yeah,
Don't they say cooler heads prevail? Somebody has to retain a cool head. It's what it sounds like to me in any conflict. Wow.
absolutely.
Thank
Just
you for that.
it's not always about who's right and wrong. You could be wrong and dead. Is that worth it?
You
Is
ain't
that
never, you ain't never lied, and I know that human nature, and I know, that human nature, we want to be right. Like we will go to the mat saying, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. But you're right. It's not about right. It's about the whole experience and being able to look at it from the whole experience. And so you're talking about relationship, and this can be at work, this can be within the family, and this can be, you know, politics, all of it.
Do you want to lose your sister? Do
Yeah.
you want her not to talk to you for the next year or two or 10 years
Mm.
because you had to prove that you were right, but you lost your sister, you lost your mother, your brother? And so it's just not worth it. You have
No.
to think about the relationship.
What does it mean to have been trained at at the feet of, at the request of Martin Luther King nonviolent training? I know that that's in what we call the Kingian, and I mispronounced it when I read your bio, but to have that as the basis of the work that you do, what does it mean, to have that?
That was exciting. But over 40 years, as I said, you never stop learning. I have several different certifications now, one in workplace, but another that I just got just at the beginning of before COVID even started, just a couple of years ago, and
Mhm.
that was mind body medicine.
Mm,
But I've learned that mediation, have an internal peace, that mind body medicine. What can you do on your own without drugs, without having to go to a doctor? That's important. And it's not against medicine, that's not what it's about,
mhm.
but your own stress level. What are you going to do for yourself? So I actually end up being certified, but I took those lessons by Dr. James Gordon, who had been sent all over the world to help heal with this program. I took it for myself
Right.
when I started my own transition, and then the more I thought about it, it was like, what a perfect complement for conflict resolution, because everyone, and it's never a one-on-one, by the way. So I'm not a therapist. I am a trainer, and so
Yes.
everyone that's in my audience then is being trained. And sometimes it is a personal situation. Um, and so, what can we do for ourselves to
Mhm.
calm, to bring it down a different
Right.
level?
To bring it down.
Own
Whew,
anxiety,
woosah.
the stress. That's right. I say
And is
that
this
sometimes.
woosah. And this is, and just briefly, if you could touch on, uh, I imagine that this work uh, is infused in your conversation about having a total transformation. And in your case, a total transformation at 70. So, how did you bring this work into that transformation at 70? If you could briefly talk about that, because we don't want to give everybody all the clues to your chapter, but I know that that's what you're passionate about right now.
But this work is so important in the world, and I've been a community activist. And one of the things I learned that I did not know, even teaching grades, primary through university level, I didn't know that, just given one tidbit, that the youth gay community, one third of the youth committing suicide is from that one community. And when I learned that, I just heard just that one piece of information. I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me?
Mm,
So I ended up being certified in that with Safe Schools South Florida, which is not Miami-Dade County Public School. They're everywhere. And it's all about teaching adults, whether they're teachers, counselors, and parents, to just love the children, love them, no matter who they are, no matter what their orientation is. And the parents must learn what to do if their children come out. And I end up being certified in that. And Robert Lupo has taught me so much about that. But just loving
right.
each other and learning how to love yourself.
Mhm.
And that in itself kind of leads me to this book. And that has led me to my dream job, was training in a developing country,
Mhm.
preferably Africa, because I'm having an affair with Africa,
As we all
and
should.
get paid for it. Because it's easy to do free work. It's easy to do free work. And that's
Thank
how
you.
training ex-militants in
Right.
Nigeria happened.
Well, like I said at the beginning, I want to thank you for being the lighthouse and being a shining example of living in the space of your gifts, and sharing those gifts with others, and being a ripple in the pond of life, being a ripple in the lake of life in the way that you are. Well, there you have it. There is the one and only Priscilla Dames, who not only dresses beautifully, but she shares herself beautifully with the world, intentionally offering us ways that we can love each other more, understand each other more, and preserve our relationships more than ever. Thank you so much, Priscilla Dames. We can find you at wingspanseminars.net. You are doing amazing things, and I know you will continue to do so. Thank you, Priscilla Dames.
Thank you so much for having me.